Okay, hi everyone, it's Tommy Stevenson here, Senior Manager for CAMS in Ayrshire and Arran. We're just going to give you a detailed look at some of the work we've been doing in Ayrshire and Arran and some of the rationale for that. So I'm going to start off with giving you a kind of viewpoint on why we were thinking in a whole systems model, then hand over to Kerry, who'll give you far more detail on the work that we've been doing, and then take the opportunity to highlight the implications for practice currently and upstream, and that'll be done by Eileen Bray. Okay. Okay, my first slide here is stuck in a quote, which I took from an article looking at systems thinking in theory, but I thought it was very helpful in looking at where we are in relation to child and adolescent mental health, and where the need for change is actually required. And we're all in a situation where, as practitioners, we are really committed and determined to do our job well, but actually just maybe we need to think differently, so that there may be a requirement for a new recipe. I'm not going to read it out to you, you can see what it's actually saying, but part of that change will be hard and in itself very difficult for some folk to actually come on board, and that's across the whole system, education, social work, health and professions within CAMS as well. But there's a recognition we needed to think differently. So why change our model? We really needed to look at a sustainable focus for CAMS in Ayrshire and Arran, and there are huge pressures, and the same pressures that are affecting services across Scotland, and the national heat target has become a huge focus in compliance with the RTT. From an Ayrshire perspective, it's been really useful in helping us think about how we can change things. But when you've met that target, is it actually a good measure? Is it a measure of success or progress? It's certainly been helpful, but I would challenge that it's actually meeting our needs. So we wanted to shift the dialogue from one of failing, because the heat standard itself was presented huge challenges across the whole system in healthcare. So the opportunity to shift our dialogue and our agenda, it was in our gift to actually do that. So there's pressures across the whole health system, including GPs, hospital and other community health colleagues. So really there was a mandate to start thinking differently. We have to recognise that the landscape is changing. NHS Ayrshire and Arran, from our CAMS service, we now sit as part of a health and social care partnership. We're integrated into North Ayrshire Partnership. There are 3 health and social care partnerships in Ayrshire, but we're still a pan-Ayrshire service. But that change in landscape meant that health, social care, and more recently colleagues in education, we needed to demonstrate that we could work together. A lot of our solutions to where we were and the pressures that we were looking at actually start with partners. Our solutions were there, so we needed to find a way of actually getting them on board with some of our concerns. So integration, collaboration, and strategic alignment became a kind of theme for us. And a lot of our conversation and hard work were focused on those 3 key areas. Critical to this was actually developing intelligence. So data management was a big issue, and we were lucky, certainly about 3-4 years ago, we had a data analyst join us in Ayrshire and Arran and really helped us make sense of a lot of the CAMS activity. And that's from sources of referral, diagnostics, weights, a whole range of issues and themes, and we've built on that data set, but critically it allowed us to actually look at what we were doing, where we were doing it, and how we were doing it. We then had to appreciate the agenda of colleagues, and particularly in education, but as in the partnership, social work and third sector, again, all critical partners, but we needed to really appreciate where they were coming from, what they wanted to do, and where did their priorities actually land. And critically, when we talk to people, mental health, well-being, psychological, emotional, were all factors that everybody saw as being critically important. Opportunities to influence leadership, ownership and practice were key for us as well. So the more dialogue, the more conversation, the more sharing of issues, the more appreciation of data, practice and activity, that in itself became quite powerful and created an opportunity for us to start to think in terms of where leadership could sit, where ownership could sit, and what would be the implications for practice. And we really exploited this opportunity. And ownership should sit with who's best to lead and influence. And that may, from a health perspective, allows hand over ownership to someone else. So a more distributed leadership model became a friend to us. Working with and seeking out like minds, very, very powerful. So we sought out allies, people who wanted to do things differently and work with us. So critically, going around, meeting folk, and again across all partners, education, social work, and more recently third sector, and a very powerful body, children, young people, and families themselves. So change was in everybody's mind. So building a narrative which engages partners was a critical issue in this as well. Test your thinking. Now, linking with colleagues with expertise in facilitation, recording and presenting data, and we're lucky to have Kerry Allison working with us, was really, really helpful. Visual representation is very, very powerful. So if you can look at your data, how it's actually packaged, presented to others, it proved to be very, very powerful and critical in influencing others and changing the way they think. Sharing information and transparency was our friend. So the opportunity to share the good, the bad, and the indifferent actually worked well for us. What we learned was that colleagues were in a similar position and wanted to effect change, but in the context of that change, we had to think very, very differently. Be creative about how you share your information with partners. Now, confidentiality, I appreciate, is a big issue for us all, but really an appreciation of detail and implications of that data shared with partners, again, as is indicated, can be very, very powerful. And we found that a lot of our partners were relying on us to actually develop and share information or package it in a way that could help them access additionality within their own areas, including education and social work partners. Develop a platform which is built on partnership. So you can importantly share success, but also find out ways to solution the challenges that are brought our way. So I was very happy to share my pain in relation to our activity and work. Was extremely pleased that when we did that, we had solutions and thoughts and opportunity created by particularly colleagues in education, a mandate from colleagues in social work to start thinking differently, and our change options brought on board a lot of third sector colleagues. Importantly, children, young people and families were part of developing this, and they were not saying we were going about things in the wrong direction. They were helping direct us, they were signposting themes for us. Okay, I'll hand over to Kerry now and she'll give you a bit more detail on our methodology.
Okay, we're now going to look at what we actually did. Well, a limited view of what we've done and looking at some of the improvement methodologies and capturing what has kind of gone well and what hasn't. So one of the first things that we did, and it was a way back in 2014 and 15, was map the existing ADHD and ASC pathways, which, if you can see from the left-hand picture, were very long and convoluted. And we could see why one of the major complaints that we have within the CAM service is the long waits, particularly around neurodevelopmental waits. So it took us some time to develop the pathway on the right-hand side, which we developed in partnership. But it did take us a year to develop even that, and there are about 12 versions of the pathway that is at the moment. What we've done with each part of each strand of projects that we've been looking at, we've developed project charters and driver diagrams for each part. So the likes of the different schools and the different themes and the different areas that we're working in, we've looked at our overall aim, and we've got a process, our outcome and our balancing measures in there. And we've also looked with the driver diagrams at potential ideas for changes using PDSAs. This is one of the diagrams that we use for the neurodevelopmental pathway. This was developing the pathway, and we had 4 kind of strands to that. So we looked at various parts of testing the pathway that we had developed, which was the first strand, concept A. Concept B, we tested a number of the next parts to the pathway. And concept D, we did a lot about communication. So it's communication with education, with parents and carers, and we had appreciative inquiry events. And the last concept D was the last stage of the pathway. One of the things that's been absolutely essential for us is collecting both types of qualitative and quantitative data to show that improvement. We've sought qualitative data from young people, from parents and carers, from teachers and all other stakeholders, which has been essential to changing and improving the work. Now we can actually see within the initial pilot that the neuro waiting time has reduced from April to June in 2016. It could be up to 200 days for a young person to have a neurodevelopmental assessment, and it now looks as if it's like 46 days. So we've been able to chart that as we've been going along, and that's the average. This is our whole system communication, and this was actually featured in a recent poster that was actually taken to India within the last couple of days. So for us, it's a whole system approach around primary schools, secondary schools, the families, primary care, hospitals, social care, and very importantly, subsector. We've worked quite closely with our subsector colleagues, and we'll continue to do that. One of the most important things about communication has been especially communicating with service users. Service users have made suggestions on how the current system could be improved. We've involved the ADHD Alliance, One Stop Shop, and they've been heavily involved in the pathway. Parents and carers have agreed to have their journeys recorded, and this was presented at our NHS board last year. We're going to be doing much more work with service users, linking in with attending the locality partnership forums, and I've linked in with undertaking some engagement development sessions, and that's within North Ayrshire, although we're hoping to do something similar across the other two Ayrshires. And I'll pass you over to Eileen Gray now.
Hi everyone. I'm going to start looking at how we put things into practice. So I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. What I wanted to start with was our priorities. We wanted to tackle inequality, and that wasn't just about making sure that we had services that covered everything, but actually that it was for the right person at the right time, and there was a lot more outreach rather than expecting young people to come to clinics. And actually, a big part of the inequality was the length of time people were waiting depending on their needs and diagnostics. So we were trying to look at all of these things, and we've developed a number of different projects in order to do that. We wanted to engage communities because we all know that CAMHS is not the right service for every young person that comes through its doors, but without knowing actually what's there and what is available, we're never going to be able to bridge that gap. So we really wanted to get out, get to know the community a bit better, and actually bring the services together. A lot of our projects at the moment are around prevention and early intervention, and we're working very closely with the schools. We have a project in each of the 3 Ayrshires, which is looking at working with teachers and working with the people that know the young people best in order to raise awareness and understand what mental health is, so that we can then improve mental health and wellbeing as a whole. But again, some of our challenges was ensuring that the quality maintained the same and the equity of service remained the same whilst we were during these times of test and change, because I think that was a big concern for people, was that if your test and change, that the young people that were already there and waiting for services would not get the same level of input as a young person would that was coming through one of the projects. So that was one of our big challenges, was to ensure that the quality of the service that the young person was getting remained the same or improved. Clarity of roles. We need everybody to be doing the things that they need to do at the right time. We need to be clear on what it is that we're asking for, and I think without that clarity of roles, young people, there's a scattergun approach, and young people are bounced between services because we're not clear on what each other do. And what we also have an increase of serious mental health conditions for young people, which was requiring a lot of different responses. Bringing them into a clinic is not helpful for all young people, and actually seeing them in different places. Some wanted to go be seen in schools, some wanted within GP surgeries rather than schools, some would prefer home, but it was trying to make sure that we could cover all of the different needs with different responses rather than a one-size-fits-all. So when we started, really, it comes down to data, and I think all three of us have mentioned it. It was getting a really good baseline of information about the young people that are out there and what their needs are, and not just their needs, but actually what they want as well. Some young people don't want to come to camps. So it was really getting that baseline of information, along with a baseline of information around knowledge of the people that were working with the young person. So we've done a lot of work around that as well. When we first moved into the schools, we all have IT systems that didn't communicate with each other. And I think there was a full working day we spent just trying to get the IT systems that NHS use within the schools. So that is still a big issue for us in terms that we have an IT system that doesn't communicate with other IT systems. Physical space, if we're trying to embed ourselves within the school, we really needed that physical space, and we've been quite lucky in that the schools have really embraced the support that we're offering at the moment and have given us space over to see young people. And I have to say some of the space has been quite spectacular. And again, I think it's something else that will keep coming up time and time again, especially with the new data protection. There's real different thresholds around confidentiality. When we met with one of the schools, one of the concerns was that we would keep information confidential, that actually the school wasn't able to keep confidential. So again, that threshold, it was another one of the practicalities that we've worked quite hard to try and overcome. So how we're making it work, we've embedded 2 nurses at the moment within some of the schools, and a big part of that work initially was around developing relationships with the teaching staff so that we could then build on the capacity and knowledge and continue to network and really get to know everything that's going on within emotional health and mental health. Continuing to test change. I mean, Gary showed you the chart earlier, but it was constantly tweaking and changing because every time we came up against something that wasn't working as well as we thought it would, or just wasn't working at all, we had to change. And again, openness and transparency, it's all about developing those conversations and that culture of speaking to each other, and then really just getting to know the resources that are out there. One of the big things that I would say as well is we really need families and young people working alongside us for this. And we have been very lucky in that we have some really good families that are really involved and really keen to be involved, which has made a huge difference because it's also given us, we can say this system's working and it's working well, but actually the families and the young person are able to tell us what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And it's been really quite, that's probably been one of the most powerful things that we've been able to utilise for that change. My last slide is really just, it's a flowchart of a young person's experience that had come through one of our projects where a member of staff was based within the school. So this young person was waiting on a further assessment, and the school had phoned Ewan to let them know that the young person was really struggling and felt that they needed to be seen quite urgently. So we arranged an assessment to be completed within the school, and it was really quite helpful in that we had so many people there that were able to support that assessment and give as much information as possible. it helped us, but it actually also helped the school in managing, working out approaches to support the young person. But also for the young person, it made things a lot quicker, a lot smoother, and actually a really good outcome came from it. So I'm going to pass you back over to Tommy for the last slide, and thank you very much.
Okay, that gives you a kind of sense of the work that we were doing in Ayrshire and Arran, and our need to look at a different way of working. The whole system model for us allowed our partners to actively work with us to align strategy. We haven't had a situation where people have disagreed with us to the extent where we haven't been able to take things forward. Very much the stuff that we've been looking at fits with, now across our 3 health and social care partnerships, there are child strategic plans in place, and they're primarily influenced by a lot of pressures, a lot of particular care groups maybe looked after and accommodated children, but importantly, GIRFIC. So strategy is embedded, it's legislatively there, it's something we need to work with. So we've embedded with colleagues, and we've taken the opportunity to, and as Ivan's touched on, and Kerry, we've worked with existing structures, so there are existing school clusters. So we've been able to rethink elements of our workforce to inform collaboration and, importantly, improve practice. And the early intervention work that we've been doing in workforce capacity building has meant that, for example, the recent investment from NHS in relation to looking at building capacity within schools, early intervention, there's a unique platform in Ayrshire to actually get access to that workforce, and that's going really well. There's a real and true sense of collaboration. We've strategically now started to write up as partnerships our intention, and we know there will be challenges, but if we're working together and solutioning them, then we can face those challenges. For us, the next thing is to think in terms of scaling up. And we've had those conversations in detail with colleagues in education, and we've taken advantage of some opportunities that are out there just now. You'll all be aware of the Pupil Equity Fund. We now have head teachers actually asking that they wish to invest in CAMS. And now what that looks like, that's for us to work in partnership and how we could spend that. And it might be elements of workforce which could sit in CAMS, it could sit in schools, but the collaboration is actually there. And we're quite advanced with some of that commissioning options as they stand just now. So whole system thinking for us is not led to opposition from partners, but actually been embraced. And it's helping us as a CAMS service to think in terms of specialist needs, high-risk youth as well, that we can be far more responsive, thinking different ways, think out the box a wee bit, but very importantly develop a new evidence base which may inform practice and how we actually go about our business, but really thinking in terms of learning as well. So we're very adaptable. Kerry touched on the ASD neurodevelopment pathway, and that has modified and changed incredibly since its original development. So having the openness and the honesty to actually think, well, we could do it differently. So adapting new approaches has been a critical part of this. The learning from that has really helped us think about where CAMS as a collective could sit, but partnership collaborations and, importantly, strategic alignment has been really, really critical to how we take this forward. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Tommy and Aileen and Kerry. That was an incredible journey within 25 minutes. So I'm surrounded by questions here. I'm going to encourage everybody to put their questions in the chat box. But I wondered if we could go back to where you kind of started and what I think is a key theme here. And you said that change is hard. And this was about shifting the dialogue. And Marie-Claire has asked, practically, how were you able to come together to find out about others' work? So I know that sounds quite basic, but really, have you got strategic groups? How are you coming together? How often are you coming together? How did you get this shift in dialogue to all get on the same page?
Okay. One of the key things, if I use the MAR cluster as an example, we recognised that if we were going to do something differently, we would need to seek out who would be our partners here. And interestingly, we had an open door to meet with the Director of Education, who is himself, by background, an educational psychologist, so mental health was an important issue for him as well. We kind of did a pitch to him. Think about this, that would assist us, would greatly help young people, and there would be an opportunity to test some new thinking, and in particular bring support directly into schools. So he was very keen to look at that. Part of the conversation was, why don't we set up a group of key people, and we can expand on our thinking, but why don't you chair it? So we have a group in the South which is chaired by the Director of Education, even though the primary focus is looking at the broader issues of well-being, emotional and mental health. And they wanted to see CAMHS reputationally improve, but also get better access. He introduced me to a head teacher who was very keen to think a bit differently, and she was having concerns and issues. And we collectively agreed, okay, why don't we do some tests of change? But part of that was getting key people in the room, lots of conversation, lots of very positive conversation, which led to an appreciation of everybody else's agenda. And incrementally, slowly, start to build up what we could do, how we could do that, how could we reconfigure resources in different ways. But I think, as Eileen pointed out, in no way was this to create some inequality in the system or further pressure the system. What we needed to do was think of ways where we could collectively actually gain from this. And I have to say that that's been our starting point. It takes a lot of work to keep people on board. These conversations at times can be very difficult, but we've found that in most cases the outcome has been solution-focused. Now, from there, we've been able to link very closely directly with head teachers. So, and Mara's a good example. The head teacher is given permission to let's test change, let's do it differently. And Eileen touched on we now have an office in this new school, our own office. It's not a shared office. We've been invited in. We've now linked electronically. There's a desk for the school nurse as well. So that commitment from education has been tremendous for us, which allows us to start to think about what we can do differently as well. The local GP practices, we've now been linking closely with them, so pathways that could be linked through that broader cluster are now being talked about and developed. But critically, seek out people who can influence, convince them of such, and critically deliver on what you say you can do. Keep that achievable, I have to say, and always be thinking of sustainability. So we're not setting people up or setting ourselves up for others, but that's been a big issue for us. I don't know if Kerry or Eileen wanted to.
No, I think that covered it. I think I would just reiterate again, it's not been an easy ride. At times there has been difficulties, but we've managed to find a way of overcoming that because we've all got the same goal, which is actually better mental health and emotional well-being for young people. But I think the fact that we're all working to the same goal and the same end has made things a lot easier.
And just to say, we do have regular meetings now with all our key partners, so we make sure we have conversations which are dealing with the challenges that are facing us.
Okay, great, thank you. And we had a question earlier from Lisa Ronald, and she just wanted to know how you are involving educational psychologists.
Educational psychologists are actually sitting on all the working groups. So we've got an educational psychologist from North, South and East Ayrshire that are actually involved in any of the work that we're actually doing within schools. So they all work slightly differently in each area, but we have got a representative in North, South and East Ayrshire. Like, for example, last week I was at a meeting at Cumnock Academy, and we had an educational psychologist was present at that meeting, and again last Thursday we met at Prestwick Academy, and again there was educational psychologists there as well, and we've got educational psychology involved in the North as well.
Great. I mean, one of the opportunities that's occurred in the back of the Stewarting School conversation is spending time with each other's services as well. So it's looking at an appreciation and understanding of roles that fit within different organisations, but actually finding common ground, and that's certainly something that's come out of our work. Another good example is that we, strategically in the North, we're looking at more locality focus. It's a wider context to it, so full community thinking. And in North Ayrshire, there's educational psychology, got some money from the Scottish Government, and they've invested in counsellors in the school But what we've agreed from the outset is that let's appreciate and understand the role of the counsellor, so it's complementary to the whole system. So it's not just an additional thing that may complicate things, but it's actually works well with CAMHS. So looking at role expectation is something we've been sitting with counsellor, ed psychs and others to look to develop and think in terms of, again, that whole issue of collaboration. So that investment leads to work that's going to benefit all of us rather than siloed activity. And that's been a constant theme in our conversation. So educational psychology has been a critical partner. Taking Kerry and Alan's point, though, ed psychs in each of the areas do work slightly differently. So that's been a challenge in thinking. But key to this whole system issue is about adapting to locality and community, and that's where the focus has been. So it's not that some people are doing anything wrong or different. It's not important. It's critically adapting.
Okay, and that's helpful, Tommy. On that, Olivia's asking then, thinking of those examples, what measures are you using to demonstrate the impact of this work?
Well, there's a number of measures depending on which strand of the piece of work we're using. One of the things that we have been keen to do is to make sure as well that we have a balancing measure for everything, because obviously the neuro work, what we didn't want to do was have a negative impact on the rest of the young people that were coming in to CAMHS. So that was one of our balancing measures, that the work that we were doing wouldn't have an impact. So we do have our outcome measures and 2 process measures for most projects, and I can, if I can, talk to somebody in more detail about that.
Okay. Within Mar College as well, what we've done is within the school they're using PASS, which is pupils' attitudes to self in school, to do a blanket wellbeing. A view on wellbeing for young people within the school. So we're hoping to be able to use that as well, and also as that would be the baseline, but also we'd be able to go back and check that each year. We're also looking at BIM webs, and I think we've had lots of conversation as well about the wellbeing web that comes with the GIRFIC model, which is quite a helpful model as well.
And we've taken the opportunity to link with ISD as well when we met with them last week, to think in terms of data collection that would accommodate a broader context to child mental health and young person's mental health. And ultimately that's a challenge, but we think in terms of a different model is there ways that we could further exploit that. Where our conversation with College and Education is that the measures they've got in place in relation to establishing attainment goals, they're happy to share with us as well. So it's thinking in terms of the whole system, how do we actually pull data together in such a way that it's going to give us a far more informed picture across the whole system as well, but nevertheless still meet expectations from an NHS, education and social care context as well. It's a developing agenda, I have to say, and that's been the one area where we're really thinking about how we actually go about that.
Yeah, no, that is quite powerful, and you said at the beginning that actually you'd used some of the data, even though it might have been painful to show, to engage with partners. I hear the developments in your data collection as you go along. What did you actually share to engage with your partners in the first place, Tommy?
Certainly Kerry will be able to a bit more detail. One of the key things for us, we were able to, we've got a quite established and good data analyst, and gathering information, for example, if I use Mara as an example, and we did some very good work in East Ayrshire as well, from the cluster area, really detailed information in referral process, diagnostics, age profile, gender profile, sharing that information with colleagues. In every meeting, people's eyes lit up in appreciation of within their community, the kind of referrals coming to a specialist service like CAMHS. But also linked to that was excessive weight, pressures on families and schools, expectations being maybe dashed, or, you know, not solution things at the right time for the right reasons. So that level of detail and sharing meant that as a whole group, we could look at, actually, here are the pressures in the system, and this is everybody's business. So if we actually thought differently across the system, we would all benefit, but importantly, young people and children would benefit. And that would ensure that when a young person is very unwell, they should be seen right away. They shouldn't be joining a waiting list or stuff. So changing diagnostic pathway, engaging in an early intervention model, which may involve teaching staff, other staff, support staff, third sector, carrying out work with support, supervision and direction and signposting. But also importantly, there's expertise that lies across the whole system as well that we're learning from. So building capacity critically, but actually sharing the data and the pressures across the whole system has proved to be really, really helpful. Maybe Kerry wants to touch on that.
I think one of the first things that we did, especially around parents and carers, was we were actually very honest. And we probably did something that was quite challenging at the time. Tommy and Eileen and the team leaders met with parents and carers, and part of that was saying we recognise that there is an issue, we recognise that the waiting times are far too long, and we were very honest about what they actually were. And it was quite a long, heated meeting with parents and carers initially. But at the end of that, we ended up with at least 3 or 4 parents that were willing to be involved in the process to try and make it better. So that was really beneficial. We've also linked some of the data from the data analyst to some of the ACEs information. So we were actually able to take it down to a locality level. So recently in North Ayrshire we did an event with Cowinning cluster, and it was Cowinning Academy, where we had GPs, we had social work, we had third sector, we had parents and carers, but we were able to actually see like the gender profile, when it peaks, you know, in terms of male-female, but also in terms of you know, ACEs data as well. So that was with help from our colleagues in public health. We were able to join the 2 lots of data together, which was really useful.
I think coming in on that, I would say it was actually very difficult, and it was very difficult not to become quite defensive at times, because we were hearing a lot of negativity about ourselves and about our service and what we were offering, and it could have been quite easy to go in the defensive and actually shut ranks, but we had to hear it to be able to make any changes. So that was the only thing I would say. It was, at times it did get a bit painful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that honesty. We've got a question from Karen Gow. She has asked, did you use any kind of therapeutic system such as mentalisation?
I think, well, I'll start off by saying no. We haven't used one particular system as such. We have tried to really just fit the young person's needs rather than going down one specific style, if you like. We've tried to be quite eclectic. Is probably the answer that I would give to that. One of the challenges in all this is that there is a level of expertise in the CAM service and levels of interest, which are it's fantastic. But from developing and maximising access to therapeutic intervention, when we're talking to young people, we want to get right help, right time. Historically, people would come in, I would suggest that maybe a limited assessment and understanding, and may join a particular waiting list, access a particular therapy, and ultimately lead to 9 or 10 sessions of something, which may have helped or may not have helped. We've really been thinking quite differently about that, so we get people seeing the right people and being clear about where we think the kind of intervention would sit. Clinical psychology, psychiatry, psychotherapy, EHPs within CAMS, being clear about what we do is in the interest of child and young person, but also that we don't overload the system either. So we are really thinking again about what models of intervention and support are going to work for us as well. But we haven't kind of hung our jacket on particular themes and issues as it stands just now, but we're really open to test opportunities across the whole system and be advised as well, but ultimately being young person focused and what would be best for them. And in lots of cases, young people have not come into CAMS. There's been real concern across the whole system, and people have had a thought that the child was very young, the young person was very unwell. But in conversation, discussion, and link with families, we've found different ways of actually keeping them away from specialist health service, but ensuring they're getting a good level of support. But when they need to come in, having to be clear about why they're coming in.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you, if you were doing this again, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we would do is go and speak to our colleagues in education, first of all. I think that was one of the biggest learning things. We probably spent a lot of time trying to work it out what we thought people needed, rather than actually going to the head teachers and the teaching staff and asking them about the young people within their schools. We worked with colleagues that are supporting schools, but actually we probably should have gone straight to the head teachers.
And importantly as well, and typically in these situations, you can enable gazing as well and looking at yourself. We didn't spend enough time actually, and we've still got a lot more work to do about this, engaging with families and young people themselves. I would suggest that's where, if there's a weakness in a lot of what we've done, actually that's where it sits. And we want to turn the corner in that and actually start thinking differently. We've been amazed that when you do have those conversations, some fantastic solutions are there as well. And I was really privileged recently, and Eileen as well. Poor Kerry wasn't. We've just returned from an international conference in adolescent health in India. And we had a poster presentation there, but what was remarkable was the commonality of our thinking with areas that have had to work creatively within communities to build capacity across workforce, to build expertise, to exploit expertise, in particular psychiatry, psychology and others, in such a way that you don't create weights and problems, but actually you build capacity across the whole system. And in all those conversations in an international context, the critical platform was education schools. Schools are a brilliant opportunity to engage and link with young people directly. And as Kerry said, once we realised actually speaking directly to head teachers, the doors opened. This was really helpful to us, incredibly helpful, and created a better level of understanding. And we stopped navel gazing and looking at our own situation. We started to think very differently about this, but also thinking other contemporary ways as well. Whole system, take some risk as well, test things. That was our kind of, we'd have probably done a bit more of that early on.
Thank you. That sounds incredible, and a key learning point there about the dialogue with the head teachers. Can I ask? We've got a couple more questions in the chat box. I'm just wondering, how have you kept your staff engaged with this, given you've used the words hard, challenging, different, change? What have you done that has helped keep staff involved in all this work?
I think, well, if I start with the staff that are actually involved in the projects, they'll find it really exciting. In fact, a couple of them have felt quite rejuvenated by the work, because although it's been hard, it's been rewarding. And they've gone back to the team meetings, and they're having open discussions with the rest of the team as well about actually what's happening within the schools, which has actually created quite a buzz within the team that things are different, and actually the reputation of the service that we are working in is changing as well and then continuously improving. I mean, there are times where it is hard. People do struggle at times and motivation comes and goes, but actually I think because people are able to see the end goal, if you like, that's actually helped build that momentum and build that motivation.
Your last question kind of touches on this as well, Jenny, and if we've learned different things as well, communicating this within our own CAMS service, we would go about that differently, I have to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of this was extremely challenging for people to start to think differently. So we had to find solutions to that. And one of the key things we did was, if we small test of change and demonstrate success, and then think in terms of scaling up. So again, even within CAMS, finding like minds, people who want to work with you. And I think Eileen's point, we've had staff say to us, they're really invigorated. They're really thinking differently about their job, but they're also stating that the job they want to do, they now have opportunity to actually do it. but in broader collaboration. We're planning an Ayrshire and Arran CAMS day quite soon, and critically to share a lot of our findings and the broader context to this and the challenge around what will be scaling up. And that will be about ensuring that everybody is on board, and if there are concerns, that we actually manage those concerns as well. But it was built in small tests of change, like mines, across whole system, and that was including CAMS as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. We're kind of coming up towards the end of our hour. We've got a couple more questions, I think. Are you, this is a question from Lee, are you showing your improvement work to those that use the service in any way?
We certainly fed back to the parents and carers who have been involved with the work, and we've had a big event at the Park Hotel in Kilmarnock where parents and carers were involved and invited along to attend. But I think that is something through the partnership forums and through the local groups in North, South and East Ayrshire that we would like to do a bit more of. We're linking in with the carers services as well. So I think we've still got a bit of work to do with that, but we certainly are keeping people informed.
And there's kind of layered complexity there, because we've been looking at keeping NHS board involved, directors of health and social care partnership, heads of children's services, our own quality improvement department, change teams. There's a range of partners where we've had to demonstrate, look, we're thinking differently, we're learning, we're changing practice. So keeping them involved has been a huge challenge in itself. But again, as we touched on, good data, good visualization of that data, good demonstration of change has been really important. But critically, that young people and families themselves actually hear about this, absolutely. It hasn't stopped us still dealing with challenges. We get complaints, still challenging wait times, but we're on a bit of a journey here, that how can we manage demand in a different way that will inform the heat target, so wait to treatment, but also find new, more responsive, more opportunity in engaging with young people and families early on. And that in turn, we at some point we'd look to see if that would demonstrate a management of demand and impact in CAMS. And the only young people who really need a specialist mental health service actually come into CAMS, but we do a lot more early intervention and support of others picking up in psychological and emotional well-being. The other thing we learned is, I think it's maybe one of Kerry's presentations, was that we had to map out, scan the environment already, and there's lots of brilliant work being done around mental health and emotional well-being as well with other people. We want to link to that and learn from it.
That's fantastic, Tommy, and that sounds like a very positive note